Have you ever been really, really motivated to do something and then like a few hours or a few days later, you just don't have any motivation at all? It's a pretty common thing. It turns out it's not weird that that happens at all. Hi, I'm Mike Antonacci, and this is Becoming God's Heroes, the YouTube channel helping you become the hero God is calling you to be. Do you guys remember that paperclip in Microsoft Word that would always give you like tutorials and help and stuff? The thing is, like, it wasn't helpful at all and just got in the way. This is sort of like that. Like there's a lot of video games where there's some sort of helpful phrase that they say, but because it happens like all the time, it gets really annoying. So one of the more famous ones is from StarCraft. You must construct additional pylons, which you probably already knew you needed to make them, but it's just telling you and it happens over and over again. I'm going to focus on a different phrase. So from the video game Fable, if your will energy, which is what you use for like spells and stuff, is low, you hear, hero, your will energy is low. Watch that. A lot of times we think our willpower is this like infinite resource that like anytime I want, I can do this thing, make this choice. The thing is, research indicates that that's not the case, that certain times of day or maybe even certain days, our willpower is finite, basically. And not only that, not only is it finite, when it's depleted, we make worse decisions usually. There are a number of studies on this. One I'm going to highlight and then list a few more. So it was of parole officers in Israel. So these are people who are in jail and they're going up and a judge is deciding, or the officer is deciding, does this person get parole or not? And what they found is if you were like the very first case of the day, you had the highest possible rate. It was like 63% or something like that. And as the day went on, it dropped and dropped. And so if you were right before the first break of the day, 0% chance you were not going to get parole. Then after that break, comes back up, higher rate, goes down, and then they take their second break of the day, jumps back up and does that. So the time of day that you appeared before this officer for parole had a huge impact on whether or not you got parole because the default answer was no. And so when our willpower is limited, we switch to our defaults. Another pretty famous study on willpower was people who either could eat cookies or radishes. They're like both in the room, but they were told they could only have one or the other. And obviously the people who were told they could only eat the cookies were the control group and the other group is the test group. And then they had some sort of very hard task. Another one that comes to mind, people were asked to memorize a number, so like short number or long number. And then they also had to, like as they're walking, pick up a snack, and there were healthy and unhealthy options. And having the longer number made people way more likely to pick the unhealthy snack because that was more taxing of their willpower. You know, whatever chemical processes in the brain, like whenever we make choices, I don't know what it is. I'm sure someone does. Whatever it is, it happens, and we just need to know about that. And then another famous one, this is with little kids where they could either eat this marshmallow or if they waited 15 minutes, they get a second marshmallow. You may have seen videos of it, you know, probably on YouTube. That's another example of delayed gratification and willpower stuff. So what can we learn from this? What can we learn from the fact that sometimes your will energy is low? I'm going to highlight 4 different things. So the first thing is know when your will is low or high. I don't know how you want to track it. You could keep track of it on a given day. Or just what are the times you feel really drained or like motivating yourself to do something is hard. So like, let's say in the morning, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go for a run. But then when you actually wake up in the morning, you don't want to do that. Okay, so your will was low then. Or it could be the other way around. In the morning you want to, but you're like, oh, but I should get to work early. And then when you come back later, you don't want to. That would be an example of having it higher in the morning and then lower later. Figure that out so that way you can make smarter decisions from it. 2 is when it's low, do something to recharge it. So in Fable, you would just drink a will potion and your will goes up. In real life, that doesn't exist. So some sort of hobby or some sort of break. In the case of the Israeli parole officers, having a break was a huge impact on it. So figure out what that thing is and then do that. Number 3, so when our will is low, we go to whatever the default is. So set good defaults. One example, let's say someone's trying to eat better. They want to eat more vegetables and less sweets. If you have a bowl of candy in your kitchen, that's probably not very helpful. So what if you got rid of the candy? Maybe you put it in a more inaccessible part of the house. You could get to it if you really wanted to, but you have vegetables easy and accessible. That's a way of making the default easier. You could also go a step further and just not have candy in your house. And so if you really want candy, you have to go to the store. So you still could get it, but you're probably not going to put in that effort. And fourth is use habits, because guess what? Habits don't use your willpower. They're not going to deplete it. It takes willpower to set the habit up in the first place, but once it's going, it doesn't. So if you have a lot of good habits, or even a good habit, and you make it a habit, and you like start another one and make it a habit, and you keep going, that's another way. It's like kind of like cheating the system, so it doesn't deplete your willpower at all. So going back to that example on the eating better, so once you set the good default of having vegetables easy and available, eventually you're going to start to like them more, and it becomes much, much easier to do that. So use habits to your advantage. So a final question for you. What are your defaults and what do you want them to be? I mean, I guess it's kind of like two questions, but they're related. So yeah, what are your current defaults is a good way of seeing where are you. And if you're okay with that, like okay with where you are, cool. If not, then you ask the second one, what defaults do you want? And then you can see how do you get from one to the other.